of papers. The items 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. And they really are grouped in relation to a range of bylaws. So I'm going to now hand over to the Chair of Regulatory Performance, and if David, if you could give us an overview of all of the bylaw papers that we're going to be considering, because I think that might assist the understanding of what we're doing at the meeting this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Leanne. We have before us half a dozen bylaws that are up for review, and it is something that I would stress at this stage that they all have undergone what we call a Section 155 analysis, which reviews line by line the various clauses in each of these bylaws and determines in the end whether or not a bylaw needs to be reviewed, and if so, ultimately recommends a special consultative process to do so. So we have a number of these items before us, and I do stress the significance that we are not actually approving these bylaws for adoption today. We are merely recommending that they go out for a special consultative process and then come back to the committee later in the year for approval, or recommendation I should say, for approval in time to be adopted, some of them for a specific reason during the year. So the first one is the Freedom Camping Bylaw, which really is being amended to prohibit all freedom camping bylaw in the whole of the Akaroa Township apart from a specific area in Rue Breton, and secondly that the proposed changes would prohibit all freedom camping on the whole of except for one area where self-contained vehicles continue to camp for up to 2 nights, and secondly that there is a limitation on overnight parking in any freedom camping area to 1 vehicle per marked space. So we are just tidying up 2 things in the Akaroa area, 1 to restrict the area down further, and 2 to say that in this area there are a number of marked spaces and 1 vehicle per space. The second bylaw is the Alcohol in Public Places bylaw, which there are a number of changes, and specifically we are including 2 new banned areas and changes to 3 of the current banned areas, and prior to this meeting we're actually now only making changes to 2 of them. So for the bulk of the alcohol free areas in Christchurch there are no change. The Riccarton Racecourse area we are proposing to make the ban on Cup Day permanent. Similarly with the Linwood Village area. The Riccarton Island area we are proposing to extend the current ban area to cover the Island Primary School, and in Jelly Park the proposal is to extend the banned area to cover the adjoining roads on either side of Jelly Park. The Addington proposal has, we're recommending today that we just retain the current Cup Day provision of 9 AM to 10 PM on the day of Cup Day, and the issue of extending the ban time in the Addington area will be further reviewed and come back to the committee at a later date. There are 2 other areas that we are considering, or in relation to large-scale events, which will enable the Chief Executive to approve a temporary ban for large-scale events in 2 areas, one being Hagley Park and the other one Rafiti Domain and Thompson Park in the New Brighton area. So that is they're the changes for the alcohol in public places bylaw. The public places bylaw, significant changes in that one are requirement to display street numbering in all commercial buildings. New clause for signage and event in public places. And we are removing the requirements for buskers to have a licence, and there will be a new code of conduct imposed under the policy. And we'll also provide for a code of conduct for Speaker's Corner. They're the two major significant changes to public and places bylaw. Trading and events. I've lost my notes for that one, and it's not on the schedule. I'll come back to that one in a minute. Brothel signage. This bylaw's purpose is really just to restrict the location of brothels and control signage that advertise commercial and sexual services. There are only some minor changes. There is a new section on small owner-operated brothels to be added to make the requirements easier to understand, and including how they relate to the district plan and home-occupied operations. And the bylaw does contain maps where brothels are allowed. So there's only minor changes to that, and it must be specified that this bylaw does not have any influence at all on the street-based sex worker issue. Cemeteries bylaw. Minor changes, and we are also looking at the cemeteries handbook, an update in that. So I go back to my earlier comment that these are all bylaws that are under review. We've done a section 155 on them. They will go out for public consultation. They will come back to the Regulatory Performance Committee for a recommendation before they come back to this council for final approval.
That's very helpful, David. So just in terms of the, because I'm sort of kind of a mind that these could be dealt with in a single resolution, but just highlighting that some changes to the bylaw in relation to adding to an alcohol ban area, specifically going back to the 9 AM to 10 PM on New Zealand Trotting Cup Day, with a reference. I don't know whether, are we actually, yes, and then item 7, request staff to discuss with the Spraden Cashmere Community Board the possibility of a 24/7 alcohol ban area applying all year round in Addington, with staff subsequently reporting to you on the outcome of those discussions with a bylaw amendment if applicable. So, and that just puts that one issue that was drawn to our attention back into the mix. So it doesn't take it off the agenda altogether, but it takes it off the agenda for today.
Yep, happy with that, and I'm happy to move that they be taken as a block.
Yep.
But,
and it's seconded by Phil Clearwater. So is there any discussion? Andrew?
Just very briefly, hugely supportive of the amendments to the Freedom Camping bylaw going out for consultation. This responds to some serious concerns from the Akaroa community, particularly over the last summer season, but in previous summer seasons as well. I think restricting the area where freedom camping can occur in Akaroa is certainly a sensible proposal and really reflects those community concerns. And I'd just like to thank staff and the committee for the speed at which we've been able to respond to the information coming out of the community, in the hope that we can get something in place for the upcoming summer season. So thanks to the committee and for staff involved in progressing this one so quickly.
Good. Glenn and then Yanni.
Okay. Yes, happy with the process and looking forward to the outcome through the hearings panels. I'm sure they will be across the details such as this on page 169 over event organisers now needing a permit. This will be on top of traffic safety management plans if my reading is correct, and I have a concern over extra impost on them when some of those event organisers run on the smell of an oily rag. So I will be curious in following that one to see how it tracks along, but happy for this to be put through to the hearings panels.
Lovely. Yanni.
I had several questions. One, I just wanted to check one of the...
Sorry. Questions?
Well, when do we... Oh, okay. You just want to get to debate. Okay. Well, in regards to the freedom camping, one of the concerns, and what we saw last time, is when we ban it in certain areas, it just pops up somewhere else, and then we don't have the resources to address it. So I'm a little bit concerned, and obviously we'll welcome the community feedback on it. So, I guess putting it out for consultation is fine, but I think we do need to think about what resources we're going to allocate to it, rather than, what happened last time where we didn't have the resources, we didn't have the places, and I think we saw a pretty unsatisfactory result. So I'll look forward to that. I think it would be good. Actually, the cemeteries one is quite useful in that it has diagrams explaining sort of measurements. There's a number of other things in these other bylaws that don't quite have the same degree of detail. So particularly things like the public places bylaw, the placement of signs, for example, or overhanging vegetation. And so it's still a little bit of a grey area. So again, I think where we can get some clarity around how we can take action against these bylaws with diagrams that show kind of an expected width or measurement might be quite helpful, and I think the cemeteries one does that well. I would just say that the other concern in regards to the alcohol ban bylaws is there's comment in the report that one of the issues is around fast food outlets that are open 24/7, but yet the committee hasn't extended it in the central city to cover an area, an operation of 24/7 fast food, and I can't quite understand if that's the evidence that you've got, why you haven't taken what would be a pretty logical step. So given that we can't ask questions, I'll just raise that as a concern, but obviously we'll wait and see what submissions come in that regard.
Tim?
Thank you. And I just want to bring up a point which my colleague to my right brought up. Event organisers in the city are actually required to do a lot of things. They're required to have insurances, public liability. They are actually, if you're going to do an event that affects the road, you are required to do a hell of a lot. And I noticed that here on this page 17 or our page 169, that it covers large events as well as small events such as street parties and neighbourhood events. I would suggest that there would be very few neighbourhoods or streets or through Neighbourhood Week that could actually now afford to go through a traffic management process to close a street for a street party. So I think that if we're going to add or streamline this process, that we really do talk with this industry very carefully, because we want to get it right. There's no reason to have a permit for permit's sake. And so I would really like to see some feedback from the organisations that do this work. Thank you.
Aaron?
Yeah, in recent years there's been a lot of discussion around some of the council bylaws in the public domain and their application of them, that we can solve or attack some problems, i.e. freedom campers, and move them on, and like Yanni said, move them to another spot. Yet other issues and major ones in the city don't get addressed because they get put in the too hard basket, like the street prostitution, where it might be outside a child's bedroom, well, 10 feet away, or nuisance and aggressive begging outside a hotel 100 metres from here that has people camping outside it, where there's fights and stuff, where they're trying to run a business. Yet other businesses will drive into the ground with bringing in bylaws and rules which are really anti-business. So it's odd what kind of a council we are at times with some of our rules, when we'll go after the easy stuff and we'll leave the hard stuff, and that should be a consideration as we go through this process.
So, anyone else? I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. That's carried.